Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Ashley. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, but I can't hear the judge. Can you hear him?
No, I cannot hear Ryan, no.
Is on.
Greetings. Can you hear me? Awesome. I believe it's just two of us in here, and this is open. Now, is this Elam's? It's already the finals?
It's just a round 4, basically. Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, shouldn't there be some other judges? Anyways, all right. Well, let's rock and roll then. Brennan, you're up first, and do you need time signals? I don't think so for this one.
No.
Time signals today and yesterday, and Lord Jesus. Okay.
Give me 1 second here.
Not a problem. You tell me when you're ready.
Yeah. Just for your convenience.
Yes, sir.
My research question and tenants have been pasted into the chat for you.
Okay. Perfect.
Or at least they should be.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. All righty. Okay.
All right.
In the aftermath of George Floyd's murder and subsequent protests where police and protesters battled on the streets of America, Senator Tom Cotton tweeted the following message. Last night, violent anarchists and insurrectionists were once again allowed to rule the streets on too many American cities. The only way to end this insurrection is the overwhelming display of force. Upon a retweet by President Trump, an endorsement that he supported the message, many became outraged that the president could call for violence against American citizens. However, outrage is not a new concept for President Trump. Whether he's denouncing far-left fascism in his 4th of July address, or how Joe Biden is controlled by far-left radicals, he uses outrage in order to garner attention online. According to Professor of Political Rhetoric at Texas A&M University, Jennifer Mercicchia, in March of this year explains that Donald Trump uses outrage to garner attention and is destroying the rhetorical presidency, which is when presidents use the bully pulpit in order to speak directly to the American public. Then the American public acts on the president's demands. And according to Mercicchia, this will have far-reaching electoral consequences in the decades to come. Which brings us to our research question. How is Donald Trump's destruction of the rhetorical presidency a reflection of the American electorate? First, we'll begin with a brief literature review, which will lead us to our model that will then apply to the artifact, and finally, answer our research question. First, to our literature review. According to Spectra magazine, published by the National Communication Association in March of this year, explains outrage politics as whenever a political or social figure uses incendiary rhetoric in order to garner attention online. This then brings us to Darren Hicks's 2014 study published in the Quarterly Journal of Speech, which is Managed Convictions, the Limits of Debate and Electoral Politics, which establishes intercollegiate debate as a proxy for the two-party system inside the United States, because both encourage deeply misrepresentative rhetoric and encourage participants to view debate as a game, where one side must win at the other's expense. This then leads us to Jeremy Engel's Uncivil Speech, The Invectives of Democracy and the Early Republic, published in the Quarterly Journal of Speech in August 2011, and establishes that rhetorical presidents are supposed to use moderate speech in order to engage the general public around a specific cultural issue. This then leads us to our model, which was published in the Journal of Communication in February of 2010 and written by Mary Stuckey, a review of the rhetorical presidency and presidential rhetoric, which establishes the 3 key tenets of the rhetorical presidency and how they apply to every modern president. Now that we've introduced our model, we can now apply it to Donald Trump's rhetoric, our artifact, and explain how he breaks the 3 key tenets of our model: commonality, anti-feminization, and cultural power. First, for commonality, which Stuckey defines as presidents seeking to humble themselves in the eyes of the American public, usually through retail-style politics. For example, Barack Obama going into Five Guys and ordering a hamburger. However, Donald Trump explicitly rejects this notion, according to Axios on January 18th of 2018, as he seeks to elevate his own intelligence over his own advisors, saying things such as, "I know more about ISIS than the generals do," which runs in stark contrast to presidents of old, according to Stuckey, who sought to humble themselves and their intelligence in the eyes of the American public, breaking our first tenet. Second, anti-feminization. Anti-feminization, as described by Stuckey, is when presidents use implicit action, such as Ronald Reagan clearing brush at his ranch, in order to appear manly or tough, and to avoid gendered labels, such as small or weak. However, Donald Trump takes this idea to its extreme, according to his own Twitter on February 22nd, 2019, where he threatened to box his political opponent, Joe Biden. And Stuckey argues this goes far outside the norm, as traditional rhetorical presidents would seek to use implicit actions rather than explicit rhetoric to fulfill anti-feminization. Thus, Donald Trump has broken our second tenet. Finally, cultural power, which Stuckey defines as presidents using moderate speech in order to engage the public over a wide variety of platforms on a specific issue. However, Donald Trump has rejected this idea entirely, and instead only gives interviews on one specific network, Fox News. According to Alex Knowles, CBS News correspondent in July of this year, explains that Donald Trump has done over 105 interviews with Fox News, far eclipsing any other news organization. And he primarily does them with Sean Hannity, who described himself in 2018 as a conservative advocacy and opinion journalist, with the sole goal of influencing viewers' opinions and convincing them of the Republican Party's ideology, meaning that moderate Americans who wish to hear directly from the president must sit through first hours of heavily opinionated journalism, thus breaking our final tenet. Now that we've applied Donald Trump's rhetoric to our model, we can now answer our research question. How is Donald Trump's destruction of the rhetorical presidency a reflection of the American electorate? First, for commonality, Ezra Klein explains in his book Why We're Polarized in March of this year that Americans are looking for someone to crush their opponents on the debate stage. An example of this would be in the year 2008, how 33% of John McCain voters were voting against Barack Obama when they voted for the late senator. However, in the year 2016, over 53% of Donald Trump voters were voting against Hillary Clinton rather than for the president, showing how we believe our side must win at the other's expense. Second, according to Pew Research in March of this year, over 2/3 of the Democratic electorate prioritized someone who could beat Trump rather than fit their ideological views, showing how now, with our heightened polarization, we must win at all costs. Second, anti-feminization. Ezra Klein explains that this is fulfilled because many Americans want to see their opponents humiliated up on stage. And according to Darren Hicks, cited previously in our literature review, this makes sense because Americans view debate as game, where one side must win at the other's expense, which leaves for the rise of Donald Trump, who frequently humiliates and gives humiliating nicknames to his opponents, which is exactly what the electorate wants. Finally, cultural power. As said earlier, Donald Trump is directing moderate voters, if they wish to hear from him directly, to first sit through hours of opinionated journalism. However, the sole goal of this is not to influence moderate voters, but instead to activate the Republican Party base. And this is proven through a simple statistic. According to Matthew Dowd in March of 2020, in the year 2000, 28% of voters in the 2000 election could either vote for Al Gore or George W. Bush. However, in the year 2020, according to Pew Research as of March of this year, only 5% of voters believe that they could vote for either candidate, showing how intense the polarization has become inside the United States, which is why Donald Trump only goes on Fox News. It's to activate the Republican Party base, which gave him a slim electoral college advantage in 2016 and is one of his main hopes for winning again in 2020. Today, we've conducted a brief literature review, which led us to our model that we then applied to the artifact and answered our research question. It could be argued that Joe Biden represents the old guard, protecting the White House from an unrhetorical president. However, Joe Biden considers himself to be a transitional candidate between generations, and the next generation of politicians will not have room for people like Joe Biden. Instead, it'll have fighters like Senator Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Tom Cotton, along with President Trump. So when Senator Cotton tweets that he wants to use overwhelming displays of force on those that he does not agree with politically, we should no longer be surprised, because the electorate has been asking for it.
Thank you, Mr. Mock. Excellent job. Excellent job. Ms. Eastman, I'm going to give it up to you. Just let me know when you're ready.
Sure. I'm also going to post my tenants and my research question for you.
Please.
That'll be going to the chat now. Sure.
Ooh. Interesting. Cool.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Damian Brown spent 23 years of his life incarcerated. Arrested at 24 years old, by the time he got out of prison, he had spent as many years inside as he did outside. Today, Damian is an award-winning Shakespearean actor. He accredits this radical life change to drama therapy and a program that saved his life many years ago. Shakespeare in Prison. Shakespeare in Prison is a social justice initiative developed by the Marin Shakespeare Company. Since 2003, Shakespeare in Prison has worked to empower incarcerated individuals and help them reintegrate into society. The Marin Shakespeare Company has developed a drama therapy-based program which focuses on self-reflection, emotional intelligence, and creative problem solving, all through exploring the powerful life themes in Shakespeare's plays. The 2014 Justice Policy Journal article, written by Dr. Larry Brewster, was a quantitative evaluation of the impact of prison art programs on inmate attitudes and behaviors. The study concluded that prison art programs have significant benefit for those facing incarceration. Shakespeare in Prison has been at the forefront of an essential arts and corrections movement in our prison system. The use of rhetorical agency, being the capacity to effect change through speech, leads us into our research question. How does the Shakespeare in Prison program use rhetorical agency to support their participants to be successful at societal reintegration? First, we'll introduce rhetorical agency through a literature review, which will then lead to our model. Next, we will apply this model to the artifact, and lastly, answer our research question. First, we'll begin by discussing the definition of rhetorical agency as defined by Dr. Aaron Rand in the 2008 Quarterly Journal of Speech. Rhetorical agency is the capacity for words to be intelligible, forceful, and to create effects through their formal stylistic conventions. Next, Enke McDaniel's January 2015 study, published in the Quarterly Journal of Speech, establishes the importance of developing personal agency within the restrictive confines of prison. They demonstrate how agency begins to transform lives inside of penal institutions to then re-narratize, improve features for themselves outside of those restrictive environments. This concept leads us to Chris Earle's article, Dispossessed, published in the January 2016 Quarterly Journal of Speech. Earle argues here that by mapping out an alternative paradigm through the analysis of prison memoirs, agency through prisoners' fundamental address is the condition for sense of self. This leads to reclaiming one's subject position and voice, which brings us to our model, Performing Civil Death, the Medea Project and Theater for Incarcerated Women by Nina Balone, published in the July 2009 Text and Performance Quarterly Journal. Now, this model is appropriate because it establishes how performance in prison advances vision of democratic citizenship that illuminates the intersubjective ties between self, subject, and world. Now that we've introduced our model, we'll now apply the model to the artifact. The three tenets of our model are life sentences, the art of self-making, and an ethic and aesthetic of the pendant. The first tenet is life sentences, which Boulogne defines as a form of civil death by which the prison system draws a clear distinction between the inside and outside world. Shakespeare in Prison aims to bridge the gap between a life behind bars and the seemingly intangible world. One way is through their performances. Anyone in the community can come and watch their Shakespearean productions in their finality. These are one way for them to network and showcase their skills through agency. Now, it's no surprise that nearly 95% of prisoners will eventually be released from prison. The 2008 Politics and Policy Journal article concludes that post-release programs such as this are essential in preparing prisoners to enter back into the workforce, and thus lessen chances of reincarceration. The second tenet is the art of self-making, which Boulogne defines as personal empowerment that performance has in the act of reclaiming one's life through the creative process. Shakespeare in Prison uses the powerful themes in Shakespeare's plays which demand of the actors to access the emotions they tend to suppress, such as depression, anxiety, revenge, death, or forgiveness. In prison, many say they wear a mask in a natural tendency to protect themselves. Performing gives them the ability to take off their mask and express the suppressed emotions. The Integrative Systematic Review of Drama Therapy, published February of 2020, says non-traditional therapy, such as this, is an effective treatment for individuals with unique needs. With rhetorical agency as a catalyst, Shakespeare in Prison uses drama therapy to help support participants in nurturing their identity as an artist rather than a convict. Our third and final tenet is an ethic and aesthetic of the pendant, which Boulogne defines as individual enrichment through kinship warm-ups and ensemble rituals. Before each theater practice, the actors begin by expressing how they feel that day through body movements, yelling, laughing, and breaking the ice with those around them, something that our forensics community is very familiar with. These activities attribute to an enriched support system among the inmates and consequently have proven to lower violence. The Politics and Policy Journal article, written May of 2014, said 61% of inmates reported overall improved behavior. The use of agency here in connection to one's group identity is something that Shakespeare in Prison works to implement in their program's ideology. Now that we've applied the model to the artifact, we'll move on to answering our research question. How does the Shakespeare in Prison program use rhetorical agency to support their participants to be successful at societal reintegration? First, Shakespeare in Prison recognizes the importance of bridging the gap between the inside and outside worlds. Using drama therapy techniques alongside community performance makes the lines drawn between worlds much less prominent. Nina Boulogne's July 2009 study highlights the importance that institutions are not impermeable borders at the edge of society, but rather a hub within society. Shakespeare in Prison values their prisoners as inclusive citizens, preparing for their reintegration into society. Next, Shakespeare in Prison uses techniques which cultivate self-empowerment. According to Dr. Larry Brewster's previously cited 2014 article, 91% of the participants reported that this program gave them confidence in themselves. Learning to be self-confident in an environment designed to oppress and control individuality is crucial for inmates to be able to one day use that empowerment outside of incarceration. Lastly, Shakespeare in Prison cultivates within their program a sense of belonging to a community. The fact that inmates who have enrolled in the program said they would never speak to each other outside of that specific safe environment says a lot about the program's inclusivity. Antoine Williams, who completed a 15-year sentence in October of 2019, said Shakespeare in prison gave him his purpose in life, and that part of that purpose was to bridge communities that may otherwise never meet. Today, we have discussed a brief overview of rhetorical agency, and we introduced our model. Next, we applied the model to the artifacts, and lastly, we answered our research question. Shakespeare in prison has certainly taken on a seemingly impossible task, gathering together the most unlikely of individuals and coming together with a common goal. This is only the beginning for institutional programs like Shakespeare in prison. Shakespeare said it best, all the world's a stage, and one man in his time plays many parts. Thanks.
Awesome job, both of you. This is hard. I love extremely well both of your topics and your research questions. So I will applaud you on that, and good luck on your next rounds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for me or comments? No?
No.
Good. Okay. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.